like to call to order the City Council regular meeting. I hope that we're ready on camera. I think we are. Well, then I'll just do roll call. We don't need a person behind the camera, right? No, I'm just asking anyone.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let's do roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Here.
Mayor Garrett,
Here.
Councilmember Hammond,
Here.
Councilmember Jennings.
Present.
Oh, thank you. I invite everyone that's in the audience and council. We'll do it after the Pledge of Allegiance before we approve the agenda. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and if we could have a,
Make a motion to excuse Councilman Dalton Barksdale.
Second.
it's been moved in second, and he did give notice for personal reasons. Roll call.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, removing item 9H, appointments to boards, and adding an item 5A for a school board presentation, and making the existing 5A 5B.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember,
Yeah, we did the motion. Did we get a second? Okay. Roll call.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Mayor Garrett.
Yes. And now we would do, what you can be the person who wants to introduce the school board.
Yes,
Person?
so we will have Kayla. She is from University K-12, and she will be reporting on University and Southfield A&T.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
Here are the events as for University K-12 for the month of December. We organized a toy drive, organized by the Student Council, and it ended on December 6th, with all proceeds being donated to Kennedy's Village. There was also a part 2 to this event on Saturday from 12 to 3, put on by our new Student Council advisor, Ms. Smith, who was present the entire time as students wrapped gifts, built community morale, and earned volunteer hours that are required for graduation. Also, I would love to give a big congratulations to all the Student Council members who were recently accepted, and I cannot wait to work with you all with many more projects to come. Speaking of Student Council, here are some of the events that are ready for this month. We have Deck the Doors / halls, where elementary and high school, will be decorating their respective hallways, and middle schools will be decorating their doors. Judging will take place on the 20th, and also we have a countdown to break Spirit Week, which started 10 days, well, it's 3 days left, so about 7 days ago. And I am so excited to see all the new events, the new Spirit Days as the days slowly unfold. Also, on November 25th, Miss Grady and Miss Maltner's first grade class read Balloons Over Broadway, which is a true story about Tony Sack, who invented the balloons for the Macy's Day Parade. Before this invention, they used real animals in the parades, but those scared the kids, so they switched to balloons. The first graders did a project-based learning activity where they learned how to design a new city. Also, I would love to say that the Benson Safety Patrol has been reinstated to University K-12, which the students will be assisting during lunch, recess, and dismissal. And as a former Safety Patrol member myself, I was very excited to see this new found activity being reintroduced. Also, our basketball team, both boys and girls, won their championships with scores being 30-3 and 38-8, respectively. Also, I would love to give a special highlight to this group have gone unnoticed in my reports, both here and on the school board. Our incredible University K-12 cheer team, who have been bringing energy and spirit and talent to everything they do, led by coaches Kayla, which is our very own alumni from class of 2023, who currently attends U of M, Coach Angelica, and Coach Chrislin. And also currently a student at the U, Maya Marshall. The team includes JV varsity and an elite competitive team who won 2 first-place titles from last season. They are gearing up for an exciting season with 6 competitions, including 4 under the MHSSA. Their first competition will be December 20th at 6 p.m. at Renaissance, where they will showcase their skills and make history. On November 26th, the seniors held their first sporting event, the Student vs. Staff Dodgeball Game. The event had a great turnout, with the staff securing another victory, possibly with questionable tactics. The middle school winners were the 7th graders, and the high school winners were the freshmen, who also played lots of the teachers. And the intermission was very fun with live dancing. And also, the Junior Optimist International Club has also been reinstated to university, sponsored by our science teacher, Mr. Carey. This inclusive youth organization promotes optimism and respect while engaging in community service. This year, it welcomed 34 charter members, and the program also helps students complete their required volunteer hours for graduation. And upcoming events, we have our winter winter concert on the 19th at 6 p.m. for middle and high school winter performance, including dance, drama, the arts, and band. And also from the 13th to the 17th, the PTSA is holding a Double Good fundraiser, and we go on break on the 21st. And that is the conclusion to the university, but I will also be presenting for Southfield A&T. The Warriors PTSA annual shoe drive extended for 2 weeks to drop off shoes on December 5th, 12th, and 19th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. at Southfield A&T. Student Council initiatives. They made blankets for those in need to the OAA meeting. They hosted a blood drive on November 20th, collecting 57 pints, and prepared 8 Thanksgiving baskets for district families. The culinary achievement. The students baked apple pies for staff before Thanksgiving break, and I heard from Eric, he said they were delicious. Marching Warriors success. They secured 3rd place in the American Thanksgiving Parade. And also, just for the class of 2025, there will be 15 hours for, 15 hours of community service requirements are needed for graduation, and after that, from 2026 and beyond, it will be 20 hours. You can also submit your volunteer logs to counselors by senior checkout. This is at Southfield A&T. Senior events and information. Cap and gown and diploma covers will be available for $95, the deadline being July 31st, 2025. The senior pinning will be February 12th, 2025. Prom being May 29th, 2025, and graduation being June 6th, 2025. The lip sync event on December 19th from 5 to 6 hours, it will be $10 per person. For the yearbook, it will be $75 until December 14th, and then $85 thereafter. Athletic updates, we have the wrestling team, which returned after several years, had their first match on December 7th. The boys basketball team defended center line on December 6th after a loss to Redford Union. The girls basketball team season began on December 6th, led by 3 seniors. Competitive cheer welcomed talented freshmen building on last year's success. The bowling team, despite many graduates they're still anticipating a strong season. And swimming, led by 2 seniors, are aiming for success. The Wayne State University C2 Pipeline. Congratulations to Addison Spears for winning the C2 Pipeline T-shirt design contest, career and college support. And also we have new staff members, Morgan Kishner, which is the college advisor from MCAC and a University of Michigan graduate. And that's the end of the Southfield A&T report. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Don't feel obligated to stay through the whole meeting.
I do. I have one more.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the fiscal year 2023-2024 audit.
Sitting here to organize papers. Well, thanks for having me this evening. You should have a number of documents in front of you that we will be going over, but first, my name is Tyler Baker. I'm a senior manager at Maynard Costerisan. This is our first year under contract to perform audit procedures as of 2024 fiscal year. So I appreciate you having me this evening. First off, I want to thank Mike and Michelle and their team for all of their efforts. Not only is it their first time going through the audit here, transition with management, also first year audit, there's kind of those first year questions, gaining an understanding of the entity, all of that type of things that they had to endure from us as well. So we understand that their jobs don't stop when we show up. So we appreciate their availability and responsiveness to us from the standpoint of a first year audit. It went about as smooth as we could expect from that standpoint as first year auditor. So I think good for the board to hear overall. What we will be going through mainly today is this PowerPoint presentation here. What this is just a regurgitation from the bound report. Instead of flipping through the 80 pages or so, we kind of condensed it down into the PowerPoint, shows some trends that we'll talk about as well. And if you guys have any questions at any point, feel free to ask away and we'll get those answered for you. So overall, we'll talk about the independent auditor's report. We'll go over the governmental fund financial statements, some supplementary information that's included within the financial statements, some of our recommendations and findings as we went through the audit, and then just some upcoming accounting pronouncements down the road that we've discussed with management. So independent auditor's report, these are pages 1 through 3, and so these are the only 3 pages in the actual bound report that are that of the auditors. The financial statements are prepared out of convenience for management, but pages 1 through 3 are ours, and then the rest are that of management. With that, through all of that work, the whole point is to place an opinion on the set of financial statements. As you can see, there's 4 types. We had an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements, which basically state that we're saying they are cleaned from material misstatement and we're placing reasonable assurance on said opinion, which is consistent with previous years, but good for the board, I think, to hear. And is the whole purpose of this audit is basically for the one sentence in the auditor's report. Along with the auditor's report, it goes through and discusses responsibilities of management as well as the auditor's responsibilities. Responsibilities of management is on the financial statements as a whole. It is also on the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements, as well as the internal control structure. So the opinion we place is on the financial statements, specifically that they are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We do not perform or place an opinion on controls or do a test of controls. We are required to gain an understanding of them, which is what we'll talk about towards the end with those findings. But just a reminder that what we're talking about today is the opinion on the set of financial statements as a whole. Auditor's responsibility, like I discussed, is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatements, whether due to fraud or error. So governmental fund financial statements. So these are pages 15 through 18 in your report. And government financial statements are interesting in the way that there's actually 2 sets of financial statements and 2 type of accounting within the one bound report. So you have the government-wide, which includes items of long-term nature. This includes capital assets, long-term debt, your pension and OPEB liabilities. They also have a set of what we're going to talk about mainly here is the governmental funds. So this would be items that are more current resource focused. So what are your payables and receivables in the coming year? What were your outflows for the most part from cash during the year? And so a much more current resource focus, and that's what we'll be discussing for most of these numbers over the next couple of slides. So in regards for the governmental funds balance sheet, this includes all of the funds that you would be used to seeing in presentation. This includes your general fund, your major and local streets, your street improvement bond fund, and then your capital acquisition fund. And again, this is as of one specific day, so this is as of 6/30 of 2024. You had a total fund balance of just over $2 million for citywide for your governmental funds. Prior year is 2.4, so citywide decreased approximately $381,000. Majority of this is due to capital outlay infrastructure in the major and local streets in the current year. So investing in the infrastructure and needs in regards to the public works. You also then there's 5 types of classifications of fund balance: non-spendable, restricted, committed, which would be board committed, assigned, which would be by management, and then unassigned, which essentially is future available funds that haven't already been spoken for. In regards to the citywide, assigned and unassigned were just over 17,000, and then unassigned for future needs, which all of which would be in the general fund, was 566,000 as of 6/30 of 2024. That far right column kind of shows a percentage of fund balance, citywide percentage of that unassigned of 566,000 compared to the citywide expenditures of 6.9 million was approximately 8.2%. The general fund specific was a little over 11% funded balance. GFOA recommends the 2 months of operating in the unassigned, which would be approximately 17%. And what we will look at in the coming slides is the use of that unrestricted over the last 3 or 4 years as you've invested in infrastructure and other capital needs, and then that slight uptick in the current year of the unrestricted to the general fund. So we will take a look at that trend here coming up in the subsequent pages. The next page is the general fund specifically, so just your main operating fund. Total revenues were just over 5.2 million. Prior year was 5.19 million, so very consistent in regards to revenue specifically to the general fund. Expenditures were just over 5 million at 5,041,000. Prior year was 5.7. Majority of this was infrastructure in the prior year, which you still had investment in the general fund for capital outlay, but the majority of that decrease is additional expenditures that you had last year, not in the current year. And then that bottom line, net change in fund balance of an increase in the general fund balance of just over 162,000 for fiscal year 24. Just in comparison, prior year had a decrease of 659,000. So you can see that increase compared to the prior year. And like I talked about, that's a percentage. Your unassigned is just over 11% of your expenditures for 24. So the next couple pages we get in some of the trends specifically for the general fund. So this is revenues, expenditures, and fund balance in the blue, red, and green columns, bar graphs. And so as you kind of look, you can see that slight uptick over the years in 2020 through 2022. You saw that increase in 23 of expenditures, mainly due to those investment in the infrastructure. And then you see the expenditures come down and revenues remain fairly consistent, specifically in the general fund, which caused that green from 23 to 24, which is your unrestricted or unassigned fund balance to be used for future needs, increase there from from 23 to 24. The next graph is still similar, but kind of shows trends as you follow some of those lines with the revenues being blue. As you can see, expenditures over the last 3 years being slightly more than revenues as you've used up some of that unrestricted fund balance that you had previously for the infrastructure needs. And then you see that 24 with that blue being slightly more adding to that fund balance. So same information, just kind of a different look at the trend, and you can kind of see those the movement of revenues and expenditures. This is the general fund revenues breakout of kind of where the revenue sources come from specifically for the general fund. And so you can see by far the majority of that comes from taxes, including special assessments at 72%. Prior year was 68%, so a slight increase in overall pie of the revenue came from the property taxes and special assessments. Of that 72, 7% of that of the total revenue was special assessments, or approximately 360,000 was due to special assessments, which inherent nature has some payment plans, but a little more one-time in nature from a revenue source than property taxes as a whole. You then had intergovernmental as the red slice, charges for services as the green, and then other, which includes interest, rent, and miscellaneous as the purple. Intergovernmental decreased slightly from 13 to 11%. Majority of that is due to the one-time recognition of the ARPA funds in the previous year. As those are used up, that intergovernmental has that slight decrease. Next page is, again, just shows over the last 5 years the trends of where the revenue comes from. As you would anticipate, over the last couple of years, you have that increase over the years in regards to special assessments, and then also the tax base increasing over the last couple of years as the tax base increases. So you can see that increase, but I think big picture, this just shows again how much you guys rely on that tax base as well as the special assessments in regards to the revenue for the general fund. Now we get into the expenses specifically to your operating fund. For the general fund for 24, that red section to the right is your public safety, blue is general government, and then green is public works. 52% of the majority of expenses is investment in public safety. Overall, fairly consistent. We'll see the next one, but public safety overall is the city's largest expenditure as a dollar amount, as you see on the next slide with the trends. You can see the public safety continues to increase, majority with payroll and related cost of living adjustments. The blue, which would be your general government, decreasing from 23 to 24. Majority of that is the recognition of ARPA over the last couple years, and then using that up, those one-time expenditures came down. You had your public works, as we've mentioned. You had the investment in the infrastructure in 23, where you see that uptake from 22 to 23 in the green line, and then you can see that decrease down to more consistent levels from 20 and 21 in regards to the public works expenditures. Next page, we've kind of talked about this kind of in pieces of all of the slides, but again, this is just the three, the total, which would be your blue if you had any large unassigned, which unassigned would be items that management's assigned, for instance, for future capital projects needs, things like that. You could assign fund balance in the general fund or budgeted expenditures. You can see main part of this is, as you've had from 22 on, you had a larger percentage of that unassigned or unrestricted plus assigned fund balance, and as over the last 3 or 4 years, you've used that down with the capital needs, and then you had that increase from 22 to 24 as you start to build that back up slightly. The next couple pages we'll touch base on quickly, but I wanted to show kind of, you have your proprietary funds also, you got water and sewer funds, so I thought it would be good to kind of go over quickly the similar trends in regards to the water and sewer fund, and that is a combined fund. Overall operating revenues were just under 2.3 million in the current year. Prior year was 2.36, so overall pretty consistent from revenues. Same story with operating expenses, was just under 2.3 million. Prior year was 2.26 million. So overall consistent. And again, with these expenses and fund balance, where at the beginning I talked about that there's a full accrual level, which would include capital assets and debt. Water and sewer fund, being a business type or a proprietary fund, includes capital assets, debt, pension, and outflows related to those, adjustments of pension and depreciation as expenses. So different than what we were operating, but the trends will still show the reason why some of those went up or down, and we'll talk about that as we get closer. But net change in net position increased for the water and sewer funds of just under 271,000. In the current year, prior year was an increase of 450,000. Majority of that is recognition of ARPA for the expenditures, and then not having that revenue to recognize as much in the current year as those one-time fundings run up. So this graph again shows the green, which is the unrestricted. Not to get too into the weeds, but you're kind of wondering why that would be negative. And that's because we show in net position for the full accruals, the GASBs and the pronouncements say to back out what you've already invested in capital assets, net of any related debt. So there's this portion of equity called net investment in capital assets. So that is the large majority of due to that green is that you had a significant amount in capital assets compared to where your net position was at the time. So it caused that negative. But as you can see over those last 4 years, as revenues have been higher than expenses, some of which was due to expense controlling, some of that's due to adjustments to pension and OPEB liability, which flows through expenses. As of 2023, you had a pretty significant unrestricted net position. From 23 to 24, that went down because you had some investment in infrastructure, again, in capital assets of approximately $2 million from that fund, which essentially moves those resources to a separate net position bucket than unrestricted, because you've essentially said we spent it already. So, next page, we won't go over too much, but overall you can see as you kind of were able to build back up that unrestricted fund balance due to the revenues being slightly higher than expenses. In 2022, that kind of one-off decrease is due to pension and OPEB adjustments, and so that flows through those expenses. As the liability comes down due to market returns or assumption adjustments, it is a contra expense essentially. So that's why that kind of outlier decrease is in 22. So what we have on 54 and 55, and on the next page is just a very brief listing of the upcoming GASBs. So in the last couple of years, you may have been discussing leases, which was 2 years ago, GASB 87. You had some bit of, subscription-based IT arrangements, which would be long-term contracts, which was last year. In the coming years, we have 4 more pronouncements, some of which will be more directly tied into the city or have a larger effect. Compensated absences, which is next year, tries to make the different ways that the industry and entities record compensated absences. It's streamlining that, as well as clarify some footnote information. And so all of this, we've already begun talks with management too, and letting them know and kind of what that might look like from an accounting side of things. 102 is certain risk disclosures, most likely will not apply to many governments. 103 is financial reporting model, so they originally said they're basically gonna redo and change how all of these bound reports look for a large degree. And they, because of public comment from other municipalities and government entities and CPA firms, basically said, we're essentially you're just having a switch, like it's the same thing, you're just kind of changing the name. And they were like, yeah, you're right, it kind of is just doing this for nothing. And so they pared a lot of that back, fortunately for everybody, and it will just change the MD&A as well as some budget to actual information and notes. So a much smaller lift than what they anticipated, but as we get there, we for sure will talk about what those changes will look like in regards to you guys, majority being just financial statement driven, not necessarily management updates. And then GASB 104 is certain capital assets. This kind of just updates what the leases and subsidies were, that says you just need to break out if you have a lot of subsida or leases for equipment versus buildings, you just have to separate them out in the footnote. So not a large change from a board decision making or management side of things. So just wanted to make you guys aware of kind of what's coming down the pipe. Next 2 pages I have here are pension and OPEB trends, and this is actually in the financial statements. This is just a snip of it. This is a 10-year trend of the assets and liabilities of the actuarial determined pension liability for the city. You can see that left column is 2023, That's because it is as of 12/31, being in the MERS plan, so that's as of plan year end, which is why it shows the 2023, which is the most recent information provided to us. About a third of the way down, you can see that total pension liability ending just over $9 million, down from 8.98 in the prior, up from 8.98 in the prior year. And then 3 lines up from the bottom, you can see the planned fiduciary net position ended at 6.4 million, up from 6.1, majority due to investment return in the current year, which caused that decrease of approximately 243,000 of your ending net pension liability, taking your funded percentage from 68% to just over 71% from 22 to 23 for the plan year, or 23 to 24 for your plan year. Overall, statewide, I used the fiscal 23 year ends just to make sure it was all in there, because it'd be an incomplete sample using 24s with not all of the 5572s being in there yet for the state. But statewide was 73%. So overall, you guys are around that funding percentage that you would expect in regards to the pension. OPEB's a little trickier on the next page. So you can see this graph looks a little bit different as you started funding your OPEB plan in 2021. So over the last 4 years, and this is as of 2024, because you're a single employer plan, you can get your own valuation. So this is as of 6/30 of 24 for the valuation, actuarial determined valuation. Decreased your net OPEB liability from just over 3 million to just under 2.4 million, majority of which was some change in assumptions as well as investment in net income. Over the last 4 years, the city has done a pay-as-you-go system, but also contributed a little bit in addition to that to get that funded status from 0 4 years ago to 17%. As you can see, that continued to climb. How municipalities operate their OPEB and fund it is very different. So having a statewide doesn't really provide a ton of guidance in regards to that. So I think overall though, you guys are right in the middle, I would say, as there are a lot of municipalities that aren't funding it at all, and they're just doing a pay-as-you-go. And so I think being able to slowly fund that, preparing for the future, I think is overall fiscally responsible in regards to the board. So the next page I have just a quick synopsis of the different findings in the documents that you have, and I'm not going to go through and read it all to you, but there's 2 letters. We'll go over one of which. This other one here goes into a little more detail in regards to the findings, but I provided this just a little more concise information on it. So overall, the prior year had about 13 findings or recommendations. Transition of management, transition of audit preparation as well. Decreased that to 5 remaining in the current year. 4 of which were consistent with previous years overall, being the bank rec review and segregation of duties. And again, as I mentioned before, we've met with management on all of these already, and kind of talked about what implementing procedures might look like to be able to rectify these findings. Check register sequence, voided checks, things like that. Credit card documentation from an approval standpoint, as well as backup receipts being retained, retiree personnel files. The liability for the pension and OPEB is largely driven by age and date of birth and gender in regards to the liability, and so we test the inputs as a part of that liability. We don't perform the liability, that's actuarially determined, but we test some of the inputs. And so obtaining some of that information we weren't able to, which is the finding, and then through inquiries through IT related was a recommendation that a disaster recovery plan be prepared in regards to what theoretically worst case might look like and how the city up and runs after that. So we've talked about a lot of these, and I think they've already started to implement a number of these, which I think is good. And so, just so the board's aware, that's kind of the synopsis of those findings that remain in the current year. Before I leave you, what we do have is this letter with, below the first paragraph says significant audit matters. And so with this is required board communication. And so in here, it talks about estimates. We've kind of talked about a number of these estimates being depreciation expense, useful lives, the pension and OPEB liability, compensated absences, things of that nature are disclosed in here to governance. If we had any difficulties during the audit, if we requested documents or asked questions that were avoided or not answered to us, or documents weren't provided to us, they would be disclosed in here. It basically says there weren't any disagreements with management, or we weren't able to obtain documents that we requested. So a boilerplate letter from that standpoint, but still required communication to the board, and I think is good for you guys to have and also hear from me what's included in there. That was a lot. Any questions for me at this time?
I'm sure there are. Go ahead.
You knew I had.
Yeah.
So one, it's been 7 years on council now, and one of these is the same one every single year, which is the bank reconciliation review and segregation of duties. You mentioned that you have talked to management. Have you talked to them about that particular one and what we can do about it? I mean, is there a way we can be creative out of the box? I mean, I know the issue is the same person being able to create accounts and then do other things with those accounts. Can we do something creative, like have the chief of police maybe create the accounts? I mean, how many accounts do we create in a just something out of the box so we're not.
Some of the bank rec finding in previous years, I believe, was timeliness of them being done or unreconciled differences. That is not what this one is. We received them timely, and reconciliations had backup for it. This is a documentation of review standpoint, so in regards to auditors, if it's not documented, it wasn't done, is the saying. And it's not even that it wasn't being reviewed, but we couldn't prove when and by who it was being done. So it was, the timeliness of it being done, that part's removed from the finding. It's just the recommendation that they are documented, timely review, and by whom on the preparer and the review side. In regards to segregation of duties, there are ways, and that I believe they already are, and they can speak on this maybe at the next board meeting on an update of them. But some of that is to vendors being added, and can that same person cut checks? So it's in the string of a receipt process or a disbursement process. Is there a kink in that chain is essentially what you would like in segregation of duties. And so that would be the way that this would be able to be addressed. And I do think there are ways, yes, to answer your question.
We've had a lot of turnover in these positions over the last, several years, and I think Mike is pretty stable, and well, personally and professionally. But I'd really like to see, this. I'd really like to not see this again next year, and really just put this to bed once and for all, that one issue.
I know you said there are ways, but did you guys actually discuss that solution?
Yep, we talked to them about if, depending on who signers were, can they add vendors, saying if you can be able to still cut checks timely, can we remove that person from being able to add vendors? So yes, we did.
Did you?
And we talked to them about the signature on the on the review side of bank recs. Yes.
And did you recommend kind of like a process, or how this process should be followed when they're separating these duties? Did you recommend that at all?
Orally with them, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You mentioned that about the bank reconciliation review was not about timeliness and the accounts being reconciled, but about providing evidence that who did it,
Yep.
when it was done, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Where you that statement is comparing to previous year's finding by Plant Moran that
Correct.
bank reconciliation was
believe-
not being done timely?
I believe timely was a part of last year's.
Okay, so from Leonard Costerisan's perspective, this is an improvement in how we're
Correct.
doing bank reconciliations?
Correct.
Any other questions?
For the voided checks?
Yep.
Not retained?
Yep.
Um,
So in
how
regards.
does that work?
So in regards to that, sequence of check register is important in regards to monthly process. So being able to document from check 1,500 to 1,650 is this month's, right? So as you go through that, if there's a gap in the sequence, we don't place an opinion on controls, but we do sample and look at some of them and request them. There were some that were correctly voided in the system. There was a check, the actual check in the voided check folder just didn't have the big void on it, right? To take that full circle. Or if it was lost with the vendor and they had to resubmit it, so it was voided in the system, you can't have a voided check if it's lost, right? So you can't have that documentation, but you can have a stop payment backup, and proof that you had that stop payment with the bank. So there are ways to then document that, that check register sequence along with the bank rec, review and preparation, side of things.
Does that need to be like would that need to be like a separate person doing that, like, or does that fall under like Michelle, or is that?
It would fall, it can be either part, that wouldn't necessarily, review of that, doesn't have to be necessarily by someone that can't cut or can cut. In my mind, it would be done as a part of the bank rec process, the preparation process.
So the second bullet in that section of this note talks about voided checks that cleared in the bank. Did you, through reviewing the financials, were you able to determine what the value was of the checks that had been voided but cleared the bank?
I don't know, I would say, I don't know, I don't remember off the top of my head.
And is this a case, Mike, maybe you know, where they're like inappropriately noted in the system as voided, but they were legitimate, and so if they cleared, it was actual payment that was intended to be made?
Michelle, you in this case, top of your head?
I think what happens in the bank reconciliation process, there is a question, do you want to mark voided checks as cleared? And it could be that they mark yes instead of no.
Mm.
I have never worked somewhere where there was a check that was cleared and voided, except for one place, one time.
Mhm.
And we caught it, we got right after it and requested the funds back. That's not what happened here. It wasn't paid and then voided. It was, I think, in the system, that checkbox.
Okay, because the note in the letter says voided checks cleared in the bank, which to me implies the payment was made.
When you said it, I heard it in my mind a different way, like I did that one time. I'm like, that's not what happened, but I know that it
So it's
sounds
kind
like
of,
that's what
it's not
happened.
stated correctly in the letter?
The check register showed it as being voided,
Yep.
but the actual check cleared the bank. So that could be, sometimes, it's shown as a check disbursement, but it's an ACH. And I don't think that was this instance, but unless you're gonna do a manual journal entry to record an ACH, it's gotta go through check register.
Sure.
I don't remember what this instance was specifically.
Okay.
But again, just a piece of the multiple bullet points in regards to sequence needing to be verified as a part of the
Yeah,
bank
so if we
rec
do
process.
sequence verification, then hopefully this
Yes.
problem goes away.
Cause you'd be tying bank rec activity to the system generated, check register.
Just check register.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I had a question on page 36 of the actual audit document, with respect to custodial credit risk and deposits. It talks about the fact that roughly about 4 million of 4.7 million is exposed to custodial risk because it was uninsured and uncollateralized. The city believes that due to the dollar amounts, it's impractical to insure, all the, is that, how normal is that?
Very.
Okay.
there are certain places that you can put money that are the former CDARs, which is essentially a lot of $249,000 CDs essentially that you're putting your money in. Some of those are more accessible than others on how quickly you can get your money out. Also, my class investments and most investment arms, there's nothing that's, like none of that's FDIC insured. So if you would like to get what Treasury rate is, that inherently makes it not FDIC insured. And so to have a large amount of FDIC exposure is overall quite common. Because it's difficult to spread it out for 250 grand each.
Anything else?
I could read my notes maybe, but.
For the credit card?
I read ask heavy.
Go ahead.
I don't know what that means.
For the credit card documentation,
Yep.
do we use a process or a system like Concur or something like that to upload those receipts? Or?
Yeah, so we're still a little old school, so everyone that has a credit card, there's only, I think, 4 or 5 of us in the city that have them now. Every single month when we get our Flagstar statements, they're required to essentially do a spreadsheet, track it all, where it goes, what account you want it paid to, and you turn that into accounts payable. Accounts payable submits it, then I get the chance to review it. If it's mine, then Michelle gets the chance to review it, just to make sure everything adds up. Then once that's good, everything makes sense, then we clear an AP and pay Flagstar.
Is
So
there-
we do have a process. It is a little more old school, but we do.
Is there a certain dollar amount where it's like, if it's like below $75, the receipt doesn't really matter?
We require receipts for everything.
Okay.
And if for some reason you do lose a receipt, we require a written statement of what you spent and why.
What about-
Naturally, it does happen if you're going to Home Depot and you grab a receipt, you accidentally drop in a puddle or it gets torn, something like that. But we do require some sort of backup with it.
So I mean, this finding is all about credit card documentation. We're just curious, like for cash disbursements, cash expenses. Somebody spent cash on something and need to get reimbursed. How are you managing?
If that's the case, it goes through a check request process. It's the same thing. You have to turn in a receipt and document why you are asking for this cash. It's pretty rare for staff to do that. If anything, it's for committees, so volunteer committees, for example, like Parks and Rec has something. They'll turn in receipts. I'll review them, see if they make sense specifically for what they approved. That gets approved. Check request form will get submitted along with the backup, and then it gets cleared.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
That's good, because that seems a lot more intense than it's been in the past, so.
Part of that is just the documented review also on the statement. And if it's his credit card, Michelle, vice versa.
Yep.
Yep.
Great.
Anything else? Nope.
Actually, I just want to thank Michelle and Mike and
Yeah.
Jessica for all the work that they did on this, because I know it's hard to do everything else that they have to do while having to also do the intensive, work on the audit. So thank you guys very much, and thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Todd.
Next, we'll have public comment for items on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. You come to the microphone or the podium. You have 3 minutes.
Carol Green on Lathrup Boulevard. I come confused and concerned about a couple of things. I'm confused about our relationship with Plant Moran and why there's still monies being sent monthly, payments, disbursements being made to them. I was of the understanding that that was gonna be a temporary thing at the beginning of the year to help with the transition to the new finance director, but I see as lately as November, there was $25,000 dispersed to Plant Moran, and wondering what that's all about. And also, if I'm reading things correctly, the budget indicates $40,000 allotted for financial assistance and the audit things, and since
the beginning of the fiscal year, and I didn't even get every month accounted for, I have a total of nearly $50,000. So I'm just wondering what's going on with that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Karen Miller, Glenwood Boulevard. I'm just here because I want this to be recorded. I'm sure people won't pay attention to it. But I'm here to talk about the gross mismanagement of our tax dollars. Since in the last 7 years, our fund balance has gone from over $2 million down to unassigned funds of $566,792. That's only 1 month of operating expenses. Again, we have bank reconciliation and segregation of duties issues, credit card documentation, retired personnel files. These are all things that have been continuing. I'm really glad to hear that some of these things are being addressed, but I've heard that in the past. Same issue since 2018. Our former city treasurer, Pam Bracci, blamed the issues on lack of personnel. We have a city administrator, finance director, deputy treasurer, an accounts payable person, and we have paid Plant Moran $107,000 since July 1st. Why are these issues not being addressed? It is obviously not a personnel problem. Again, tonight we're giving away grant money because deadlines can't be met. The Finance Committee is recommending more ways to tax us, all the while our money is being recklessly spent. What's going on here? Next issue is about the special assessments. I have one example. There's a house on Meadowbrook Way. Owner of record is Dorinda Roberts. Since 2020, she has been assessed $39,052.78 for delinquent water bills. Those assessments have gone against her taxes every year since 2018. She just had a sidewalk assessment that was added to her taxes. The problem is Ms. Roberts passed away in 2017. What has been done to address this situation? How many more are there like this? If you look at her water usage history, up to 57 units per month, there's a problem here. And all the reads are auto reads. So again, what is going on here? Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to be heard next? Anyone? Okay, I would take a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved to second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Mayor Garrett.
Yes. Thank you. Next will be the public hearing for the Community Development Block Grant 2021 to 2023 reprogramming. Anyone want to be heard regarding this public hearing can come to the podium, state your name, and again, this is 3 minutes also. Anyone want to be heard regarding the public hearing? Okay,
Will there
Karen?
be an explanation of what it's about?
Karen
why
just
we're
talked
at
about
this
it.
place? Sorry?
Karen just talked about it.
So going,
The reprogramming, I can talk about the reprogramming. So from 2021 through 2023, the city has been assigned about $7,000 a year from Oakland County Community Development Block Grant Program. It's a program by HUD. Oakland County manages for us and then distributes money to municipalities. From that time, the city has spent some of the monies on CDBG programming. However, the documentation wasn't kept and wasn't submitted timely to the county. So in order for the money to stay in the county versus reverting back to HUD, it needs to be reprogrammed to something that it can be spent by the end of December. Fortunately, the city doesn't have the capacity to put on a senior program for $21,000 in 2 weeks, but the county does have a housing improvement program that has benefited the community in the past, and we think it will be beneficial if they get this money now.
thank you. Does anyone want to be heard for the hearing? Hearing is now closed. We'll go into the action request for consideration and approval. First is the request to approve resolution number 2024-18, Community Development Block Grant 2021-23 reprogramming. Who would like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-18, Community Development Block Grant Program years 2021 to 2023 reprogramming.
Second.
It's moved in second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, it is dispiriting that we got these block grants and spent money on programs, and because it wasn't accounted for appropriately, the city was not actually able to get the money back for the grants. Clearly, there was something missed there, but you're improving that. The documentation processes we have in place now will manage this much better. In the meantime, this to me personally felt like the best way to resolve how to deal with this in a way, as Mike described, keeps the money potentially available to residents in Lathrup Village who can apply for these home improvement grants that the county manages. So that vehicle made sense to me to how we would redistribute the money in a way that could still benefit residents, just in a different way than we initially intended.
And Mike, if I know we talked about you putting that document or the application into the e-newsletter, correct?
Yep, so that's the plan for the new year when they start really accepting new applications. I included the application in your packet just so you could see what it
Right.
looks like from your standpoint, what the residents will see. But yeah, we'll start doing a little more media push in the new year.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is a request to receive and file the fiscal year 2023-2024 audit. Who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to receive and file the fiscal year 2023-2024 financial audit.
Second?
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion?
I would like to just see if you guys can provide us with an update on some of their findings throughout the year. I know you guys are doing a great job, but I would like to see if we can get those updates a little bit more often, just to make sure we know for sure you guys are working towards these findings not existing.
Michelle and I have already talked about it. We can write something up for you guys. But it's also one of those things you gotta remember. This starts from June 30, 23. So this
Yeah.
includes everything before even the new staff comes on. But as Tyler mentioned, we have started addressing them, but we can definitely put something writing for you.
Thanks. And I'm not diminishing your work. I'm just
I
saying.
get it.
Yeah, I
When
mean,
you
the
see
issues
findings.
throughout-
Yeah, I know it's
Yeah.
a past work as well, so.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is the request to approve professional services for community project, grant funding, engineering, Southfield Watermain.
Thank you, Mayor. So as council knows, thanks to Congresswoman Tweed, the city was allocated just over $950,000 in the federal budget for some water main work. Since it is the federal budget, we do have to go through their grant process to whatever they assign it to. For us, we were assigned essentially an EPA project since it is water main, so we have to jump through all those hoops. And while going through their process and working with their team, we started talking about what could be a reimbursable expense, and naturally we talked about engineering. As council's aware and the city knows, we've used Giffords-Webster's for years here in the city, but since we do not have a specific contract for this project, as of March of '24, it would not constitute a reimbursable expense. So we talked about this at a couple study sessions to see kind of which way you guys wanted to go, because with this project, we are also required to do a 20% match. So for this, we could either put this out for RFP and get potentially a new engineer or Giffords, and then submit it all for reimbursement plus the 20%, or we could go the route where we talked about last study session, which is assign Giffords the engineer for this project, but do all the grant and all the match towards Watermain. So based off the study session discussion, that's kind of the way we want to go. So in your guys' packet is a professional services agreement from Giffords to manage this project for us.
I'll make a motion to recommend and approve, I'll make a motion to approve the enclosed professional services agreement with Giffords-Webster.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I think this approach, I mean, you've all heard me talk about water mains still have blue in the face over the last 7 years, and I think we should use this grant and take as much advantage of it as possible to do as much water main as we possibly can. I think a lot of people know that we've got miles and miles and miles of water main in the city that were designed for a 50-year life that are now 100 years or older. So I think this makes sense.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree. It makes sense. It seems to be the most, the solution that will provide us the biggest chunk of this, the money for this project to get the most value out of it in terms of improving our water mains, which continue to fail. Had a water main break today. I mean, you know, it needs to happen. It is a significant amount of money. We are funded for it. I mean, we have budget to manage our investment in this. It's just a decision that we're making to put money towards this. And it allows us to take advantage of this great grant that Congresswoman Tlaib helped us to acquire. So I support it.
Lastly, I just think it makes sense because, as you stated, we're gonna have to pay Giffords Webster some way, somehow. So I think we should just, move forward with them instead of paying two people. So two different engineering firms. So I think it makes the most sense.
Agreed.
Anything else? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is request to approve contract for the Michigan Department of Transportation eastbound 11-mile paving project.
Thank you, Mayor. So back in September, City Council did a budget amendment to assign the city's match for this eastbound 11-mile project through the Oakland County Federal Aid Committee. With that comes naturally a requirement for us to enter into a contract with MDOT to meet all their specifications, and especially since it is next to a highway that MDOT oversees. So this is just one of the steps in our process. If approved, we have already started submitting engineering forms to MDOT for this project, and we could potentially start April construction if everything keeps moving forward as is.
Thank you. Who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the MDOT contract.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question on this one. So we have, it talks here in the, where we had a $220,000 budget amendment, but the actual cost looks like it's only $162,000?
Engineering's not included, so that 220 includes engineering.
Got
So
it.
engineering's not part of a reimbursable cost of the
Got it.
Oakland County Federal Aid Committee.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we'll have the request to approve resolution 2024-19, tentative special assessment roll for general purposes and schedule a public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a yearly activity for us every December, January timeframe where we look to examine outstanding bills and potentially roll them to taxes. So today we're just looking for you guys to officially approve this resolution, which approves this temporary roll and then sets the public hearing for January. Once approved, then we'll start officially sending letters out to individuals where they can come meet with staff, either pay their bill, meet with staff, either work out a payment plan, or start submitting it to the City Council.
Thank you. Who would like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to adopt the attached resolution and set the public hearing for special assessments for January 27th, 2025 at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we have the request to approve the 2024 Voter Challenge Charity.
Oh, we forgot to talk about that in the study session.
We did. So I think that one actually should probably be tabled, but.
So just some background. So each major election, Pertnick of Pathology Outline puts on a voter challenge to neighboring communities where if they meet a certain voting threshold, they will donate a certain dollar amount to a charity of the city's choosing. Since the city had just over 77% turnout at this last election, we were delegated $250 to be donated to a charity of our choice.
Actually, I'm gonna make a motion to, well, we can't make a motion because we don't have the charity, but I think we should discuss it now because he's gonna need to do it by the end of the year.
Absolutely. I was thinking
So-
that, so make a motion.
Well, we don't know what charity, so I think we needed to discuss it and then make a motion for a particular charity. Or I could just make a motion for any charity
You
and we
can
can.
make a motion for the
Okay.
charity to be determined.
Yeah.
So you can approve it, and then what we can do is
Well-
discuss it and then amend it.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to a particular charity and then we can just vote it up or down. So I'll make a motion to recommend the $250 donation to the League of Women Voters.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion?
Yeah, so we did discuss this during our last study session. I brought up the point that this organization is invested in voter engagement, and so it made sense to me to use the grant from them to go towards an organization that supports getting the vote out and getting voters engaged. During the study session, I suggested the League of Women Voters, or I don't think the Obamas have, I can't remember the name of it, but they have a nonprofit organization that's also involved in voter engagement and trying to bring people to polls. But it seemed to me it meant to make sense to put this grant money towards an organization that operates locally, that we know is engaged in Lathrup Village, and in getting out the vote. The League of Women Voters every 2 years puts on a candidates forum for all the candidates that are running for city council. They provide information to voters in our city about who's running and what their platforms are. League of Women Voters seems like a great organization from my perspective to put this money into. I'll also say I did receive, because we did put in the newsletter, we asked residents to provide input to the city council about organizations that they thought would be worthy of receiving this grant money, and I got an email suggesting that Boys to Men receive the grant money.
Thank you. I like the idea of the league. Oh my goodness gracious, the League of Women Voters. What I was thinking for is for something that's a nonprofit that is in Lathrup Village and benefits Lathrup Village. And so I was thinking more of the Children's Garden, because that's a nonprofit. Also, the music festival is a nonprofit also, and so I was thinking one of those two things, something that actually benefits all of the residents in Lathrup Village and is going to a Lathrup Village nonprofit. Anyone else have any?
I just want to mention, I did have a resident reach out to me and suggest Organs for Life, but I agree with you. I mean, I could be on board with either League of Women's Voters or either of the two of those. I think all three of them are worthy, so.
I would just say that the music festival itself is not like a nonprofit entity. It's,
So that's why I asked, is it a nonprofit?
it doesn't
Oh,
get
okay.
a profit, it doesn't generate a profit.
No, specifically a 501(c)(3). Okay, so it's not. So then I'll erase that one, officially take that off the record that I suggested it. And so I would suggest the Children's Garden.
Yeah, I do like the idea that, like you noted, a nonprofit that's actually organized and operating inside the city and provides a benefit to the city. I would argue that the League of Women Voters does also provide a benefit to the city, but as you noted, they're not based here.
Right. Anyone else? So we're doing a roll call for the League of Women Voters.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
No.
Mayor Garrett.
No.
All right.
I'll make a motion to have Nate Pernick, how do you say his name? Is it Pernick?
Not Pernick.
Yeah. Make the $250 donation to the Lathrup Village Children's Garden.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we have the request to approve the 2025 City Council meeting dates and city observed holidays.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a yearly thing for City Council every single December where you set your official meeting dates and city observed holidays for the upcoming calendar year. Based on last study session, there seemed to be a consensus that you wanted to stick with the same, pretty much the same schedule, first and third Mondays of each month, 6:30 study session start time, and 7:30 regular meeting start time. And naturally, it's noted in the packet what meetings would be moved due to holiday conflicts.
Who would like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the 2025 City Council meeting dates and city observed holidays as presented in the agenda packet.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just to clarify, Mike, you mentioned study session starting at 6:30. This is actually at 6. It's just in the statement, it's written correctly in the agenda packet. Just wanted to clarify that.
And then also, normally the office is closed the Monday before election. Am I reading? Oh, yeah. It's usually closed the Monday before election.
That's up to you guys. This year we were open. We were just election business only, but we did have staff in the building doing their typical day-to-day things.
Well, I think that if we were able to maintain this year's election, and so you said it was only election business, so that people could come up for, or no?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's just a thought. That's how it's been, and I know we don't, just because some things are historical. It's up to you all. You know, we'll play it by ear. But anyway, I'm done with it. So, anyone else have any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Request, motion passes. Next is the request to approve the 2025 Board of Review meeting dates.
Thank you, Mayor. So same thing, more a little housekeeping. So every single December, City Council sets the board of review meeting dates for the upcoming calendar year. The dates included in your packet meet state regulatory guidelines, and then they also work with our assessor at Oakland County.
Thank you. Who would like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025 Board of Review schedule as presented in the agenda packet.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett.
Yes. Motion passes. Next is the City Administrator report.
Nothing this month.
Thank you. City Attorney.
I have nothing for you.
Thank you. Reports for boards, commissions, and committees. First one is the DDA. I don't think they had anything. They have a meeting on Friday at 12. Planning Commission.
Planning Commission is meeting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. On our agenda is review of a site plan for the school. That site plan was reviewed and not approved by the Historic District Commission in their meeting last week. So it should be a very interesting meeting. There's also a review of a site plan for a indoor golf club, like a digital golf club, which is came to the Planning Commission previously. So this is a review of an updated site plan from them.
Thank you. Parks and Rec. Tree Committee, I'm not sure when they're meeting yet. I haven't seen anything, so as soon as I know, you will know. School Board.
We just had the school board rep here today. I think that should conclude their meetings for the year, them coming to our meetings. And then I have a plan to meet with the school board president and see when we can start planning for a joint meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is for the historical.
Yeah, the Historical District Commission, I happen to attend the meeting, so I'll give a real brief update. They did approve the installation of an antenna here on City Hall. As a reminder, we have a program that the council approved a year or so ago to make water billing more automated, so that you don't have to drive around. It can be read from antennas that are placed throughout the city, and so we needed the Historic District Commission approval to replace the current antenna here with a new mast for the antenna. And then as Jason mentioned, with respect to the redevelopment of the Lathrup School, they did approve the concept of the redevelopment, but they did deny the plans, and so the basis for that was, there were a few minor ones, but the major one was that the contemporary design was not compatible with the existing structure and diminishes its significance. So the applicant has two options. They could either change their plans and go back to the HDC, or they can appeal that decision to council. So we'll wait to hear from the applicant as to what they're going to do.
Thank you.
Real quick, I do have one correction to what I stated for the planning commission. The agenda item for the golf simulator is a shared parking agreement, not a site plan review. So they don't have enough parking spaces as required by the ordinance, so they appealed to their neighbors to share parking. So we're going to be reviewing that with them
What are they
tomorrow.
thinking about, where's the location?
The address is, hold on a second.
Isn't it about the
28305 Southfield Road. No, sorry, 28317 Southfield Road is the address.
Next to the bartender.
yeah, the bartender school?
Drive around now. Thank you. Oh, that's cool.
Thank you.
Any unfinished?
I'm going to do something under unfinished
Okay.
business.
Go
So I want to spend a little bit of time, and I'll try to be as quick as possible, talking a little bit about how the audit report reinforces some of the financial reports that this body has made over the last year. I'm glad to see we have one of our Finance Review Committee members in the audience as well. So I want to talk about a few things. The first one is the general fund, and as Tyler mentioned in his presentation, the general fund rose by 28% this year. We added $162,000 to the general fund, but I think it's important to understand how we added $162,000 to the general fund. It was due to two factors, and the first factor was that our expenses were $11,000 less than what we budgeted. So that's more confirmation of what the Financial Review Committee reported earlier this year, and what Plant Moran reported last year, and now what we're hearing for the Manor audit, that we are managing our expenses and we're doing a good job of managing those expenses. The second factor of why it rose $162,000 was because our revenue was $146,000 higher than budget. So we pulled in a lot more money than we thought. But what's important, really important, I think, for residents to understand is where that money came from. And the revenue that we got that allowed us to be $146,000 over budget, which is a good thing in this case, came from special assessments. We had $369,000 that we pulled in for special assessments. And those special assessments were for mostly for sidewalk replacements and culvert replacements. And as some of you may remember, back in January, this body released an analysis that talked about why our general fund was depleted so much last year. And the biggest cause of that was because of these special assessments, and we expected to get some of that money back this year, and we did, and we got to the tune of about $369,000. As Tyler said, this is kind of a one-time thing. There will be a little bit trickle over next year, so we should get some more revenue because some people entered into multi-year payment plans. But it is a one-time thing. So,
Excuse me? Oh,
Okay.
go, finish.
yeah. So it is a one-time thing. So I think it's really important to look at the typical or the standard revenue items that we get from year to year and look at how it changed from one year to the next. So the ones that are dependable and things like state shared revenue, revenue from taxes, revenue from the community room, and all those other sources. And if you take out that $369,000, the one-time hit, our revenue would have been down by $221,000 this year. So both of those factors, the fact that our expenses were down and that the revenue would have been down as well, are both confirmation again of what the Finance Review Board or Committee talked about, as well as what Plant Moran and Manor. And to that point, I do want to read one paragraph from the audit because I think it's important for our residents to hear this. And this is the economic outlook that was in the audit that was presented today. It says, the city budget for next year will require tough decisions by city council and the citizens of Lathrup Village, being mindful of our long-term obligations. There are several economic factors that will challenge the city. The challenges include inflation, potential cuts to personal property tax, health insurance increases, pension costs, potential pre-funding of retiree health care, our overall millage rate, and state laws limiting the growth in property taxes. The 1978 Headley Amendment and Proposal A, passed in 1993, both limit growth of the rate of inflation. Headley requires a rollback of the overall millage rate if total property values grow at a rate higher than inflation, and Proposal A limits increases in individual property tax assessments to the rate of inflation. Previously, city residents approved a Headley rollback in May of 2010. However, the rollback expired, and now here's really the key sentences in here. And the continued shortfall in revenue have required the city to rely on its fund balance in previous years. This practice is not financially or fiscally responsible. A Headley rollback will need to be considered by city council and voted on by the citizens in order to maintain and expand its level of services. So now this is 3 different sources, Plant Moran, Manor, and the Financial Review Committee, who have all recognized the fact that we have external forces that are hitting our revenue and keeping and will keep us from providing the services that residents demand. And this is why we're putting a Headley override on the November 2025.
We're considering it.
Considering it, yeah. We started the process to put it on the ballot in November, and are also considering a Public Act 33 to shore up our expenses in the short term. So that's one point I wanted to make out of the audit. The other thing, I've heard a lot of people talking about and read some stuff about people saying that the city's financial issues are related to the city carrying a massive debt load, which is inaccurate. The audit report shows that we have roughly about $11.5 million of long-term debt. Of that long-term debt, of that $11.5 million, $10 million of that is due to the recent 3-year street project and the recent 3-year water and sewer improvements, each of which are roughly about $5 million. So that $10 million is all funded. It's not unfunded debt. The $5 million for the road project is funded through our road millage, and the $5 million for water and sewer is funded through a surcharge on the monthly water bills. So essentially, that leaves us with about $1.5 million of debt, and that's not a lot for a city of our size. The other thing to mention there too is, with the exception of the $5 million of debt for the road program, which again is being paid for through the millage, none of that other debt comes out of the general fund. It's all water and sewer, so it's not paid from property taxes, it's paid from the water and sewer funds. And then the last thing I think that's important to note is the audit also noted that the taxable value of Lathrup Village, so that's the aggregate value of all the property in the city, rose to $176 million. But that's still $13 million lower than where we were in 2008 before the market crash. So if you remember, Prop A limits individual property value growth, our taxable value growth. So even though we crashed in 2008, our city taxable value is still 7% lower than it was 16 years ago in 2008. And that means, all things being equal, the property tax revenue that we can generate is still 7% lower than what it was, 16 years ago. So I think that's important to note out of the audit as well. So I thought it was a good audit, and I think that it really did confirm a lot of the things that we've been talking about in the last year in terms of our financial issues and how we address them. So.
Thank you. We have public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. You want to come to the microphone on the podium, state your name.
Carol Green, still confused. Talk about the using Gibbles Webster for the engineering of the Watermain issue. I thought that there was a need for bids for anything that was going to be more than a $10,000 expenditure to the city. So if somebody could help me understand that better, I'd appreciate that. And the other question I have, I don't know if this is the appropriate forum for it or not, but all the talk from Surnow about using the pilot program for the development of the school. I'm just wondering if somebody somehow could give an explanation of that and how that would affect the city. Would the city be gathering taxes from that, or, you know, how does it interplay with the government program? So, that's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard?
Rick Wiz on Lathrup Boulevard. Might be a little dense in my understanding, but Bruce, you said something about money to the general fund from special assessments from the sidewalk and culvert program. Okay, so does that mean that what residents were charged was actually significantly more than the cost of replacing those slabs and culverts? And that extra money was then just put into the city's coffers? That's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would want to be heard? Anyone else? Moving on to mayor and council comments. One, I want to apologize for not showing up to the women's luncheon today. Normally, I would get a email from someone for an invitation. I don't know if the rest of you all received one, but this year I did not. So I apologize for not being in attendance for that. And then the other is I want to wish everybody happy holidays. Have a happy holidays. Anyone else?
Yeah, I wanted to address, at least in part, Carol Green's comments about Plant Moran during the first public comment section. This audit that we received today, the audit report, is showing that the city is doing a much better job of managing our finances and our accounts. And a lot of that is due to the support that the city staff, which is very small and brand new, right, just about a year on the job, is getting from Plant Moran and their advisory services. If we don't spend that money to get that support, it's much more difficult for Mike and Michelle and Jessica and their staff to implement the controls that people have been complaining for years have not been in place. And the report is telling us that they are improving. So I think that is money well spent. Certainly it's worth a look, like how much longer do we need to have support from Plant Moran? Do we need to continue to budget as much money in future fiscal years to engage their services? But right now, I think there's a lot of value that we're receiving from that support. So that's just my personal take and what I know about the situation, why Plant Moran is still engaged. I mentioned during the study session that they fly, just because I'm talking. I mentioned in the study session, the Christmas lights look great outside City Hall, but I know from talking to Jay, the owner of Jay Birds, he actually engaged the same company that was putting the lights up over at City Hall to also put the exact same lights over in the trees in front of his property, and that's why it looks so cohesive and cool. And happens, I was talking with Rick Wiz before the meeting, happens to match lights at his house. Rick's the originator of that color scheme. He's had those lights for decades. But it's very cohesive, it looks great, it really provides a splash as people drive through down Southfield Road and through our city, that it's a nice place to see, and the look and feel of it is very professional. So again, kudos to Mike and Austin and the team that helped put together the package of bids that we received to review different offers from companies to do that work. It looks like we picked a good one, and kudos to the DDA for supporting funding it. And happy holidays to everybody, however you celebrate.
Mike, do you know, did we ever do anything with from the last meeting with the chicken smell? Did we ever follow up with that? I know we had talked about a couple
Yeah,
potential things.
Steve started reaching out with them. I haven't heard a complaint since, so they've done something, but as in putting a full deodorizer in there.
Okay. All right. I also want to thank, she left, but I also want to thank Lori Kuntz for pointing out at our last meeting something that we were doing inappropriately. Namely, we weren't stating the excuse or the reason why council members weren't here. We talked about it in the study session a little bit, and I think one of the things that happened is about a year and a half ago, we spent a lot of time updating our council, now it's my turn, our council rules and procedures. And in that, we were heavily focused on what is defining as being an excused absence and what is the notification requirement. And I think we just forgot about the fact that it also does say in the charter that we have to state a reason, otherwise it's unexcused. So we want to thank her for bringing that up. Rick, to your question, no, it's the actual cost. So so last year, our fund balance was down because we did all of that sidewalk improvement. I'm gonna make numbers up, but let's say we did $500,000 worth of sidewalk improvement. We had to pay the vendors. Vendors had to be paid, so the city paid the vendors that $500,000. And then we turned around and we billed the residents for each of their share. And so that money has slowly been coming in. And so that's what that $369,000, most of that $369,000 is. It's the money that residents have been reimbursing us. We still should be, like I said, we still should get some more. Probably not as much as this year, but we still should get, a significant amount next year because of people paying it over 2 years. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
I want to thank the rec committee again. They're just hitting it out of the park. With Winterfest was great. It was a great time and well attended. And I think, the pilot program. I can talk a little bit about the pilot program. So, none of that has happened yet. Obviously, it was brought up, and the pilot program is basically the developer paying us a payment every year instead of property taxes. Now, how that would end up looking, we don't know, which is why we, haven't acted on it yet. But I can pretty much say I don't think anybody here is going to approve the pilot program. At least I can speak for myself, unless the city is getting taxes associated or getting revenue associated with that. So that's got a long way to go yet.
Okay.
But I expect that there'll be a lot more discussion on that as well. And I think that was all I had.
Jaylen, you have anything?
Oh, happy holidays to everybody. Did I say that?
No.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Just wanted to thank whoever came out to the Festival of Lights, and happy holidays to everyone. That's all.
Yeah, he did a great job on coordinating the Festival of Lights, so thank you, Jeremy.
I did have one last question, just to put it on record. And this is to you, Leanne. What is are there consequences for racist remarks during a meeting? Or during, can someone, I don't know, is the right word, sanctioned or not be able to be here, or outburst, which is.
Well, as a council person, you could do a censure.
Okay.
For that, if that applies to a council person doing that. But I believe, rules of decorum, just in general, as an audience member, if there's a disruption, this is a public meeting, the public is welcome, and it's welcome to speak at the appropriate time during public comment. But, if there are inappropriate comments that would incite, some sort of, it's a tricky subject because I guess it could be somewhat subjective depending on, what the comment is or not. But again, there's the First Amendment right and ability, to attend the open meeting. So I guess it would just depend on what contextually and actually, people could be definitely asked to leave, but, to physically remove someone, that's a different subject. I mean, the actual ability to have someone removed was not, I guess a police could come, but I'd have to do further research into that to give you a very comprehensive answer to that.
I'm sorry. But if a resident is being disruptive in the meeting,
correct, yes.
they can be removed. Like I'm thinking of
Correct,
the
yes.
HTC meeting where we had several outbursts from one resident, and
Correct.
I think the chair did a good job eventually. I mean, I think he was new in that role and wasn't quite sure and eventually had to step up.
Yes, disruptive conduct in that manner, if it rises to such a level that it's, preventing the meeting from going forward, yes, there are rules of decorum. For instance, people are allowed to speak. There's a open meeting has a public comment period, but that can be limited to 3 minutes or time limits. There are limitations on what people can and cannot do. So, yes, I mean, if there's a disruption, they definitely could be asked to leave. Now, whether or not they do so, then that just from a practical standpoint, I guess can be an issue. But if it's so disruptive that the meeting cannot continue, then yes, they could be barred from the meeting so that it could continue. Now, as far as a specific question about a racist comment, things of that nature, again, it's somewhat subjective and hard to give an exact answer without having the full context of exactly what's
I'll give you the full
going on.
context of it afterwards, but just to let you know, there's been 3 incidents where residents have approached and said what was said. That makes sense, and it's not ambiguous whatsoever. It is the sincere. That it's a racist. It's a slur that you don't use.
Doing a public comment
No,
period
it's just,
during the meeting?
just being at different, either being in here or being at a, city, what's it called, a city sponsored events, being on city property. Saying it to, my whole point is that, I was disappointed to hear it, and I think that I was very disappointed to hear it, and it wasn't just one particular class that was talked about either, so, or one particular race that was talked about. So I just wanted to see, and talking to you all, just that, I don't think that that's the type of speech that should be tolerated no matter what. There's no room for that type of hatred, or hate. You can have the hatred at your own house, but to be on our property that we all pay taxes for, I don't think anyone should feel like they are being a victim of any type of racism.
Understood, and if I may, I will definitely do a little bit more research into that so that I can give you a more comprehensive answer, regarding that kind of behavior at general, whether it be an open meeting or a general versus a general city function, open to the public, but not necessarily like a meeting.
So,
Because there is decorum, obviously, is different in a meeting versus other city-sponsored events.
So I was, and some of the reason I was hesitant to bring it up, but I was sponsored, not from dollars, not from taxpayer dollars, to go to the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement's mayor session in California. That's where I was last week. And from what their policy person was saying, is that there are certain things that we can put in place to make sure that anti-Semitic rhetoric is not said, or any other, for any kind of race or whatever, can be put into place. I have the policies that they gave examples of, but I would like for us to really kind of look at it, because it was disturbing.
Well, most definitely, when you bring that up, in the context of, for instance, your social media platforms, city website, or anything that's administered by the city, in that regard, if there are comments, that is an appropriate thing for the administrator of whoever, be it the official administrator of the city, or whoever is in charge of moderating that platform. They certainly can remove those comments, should remove those comments. And it's stated as part of a policy as well, just to make it all very clear. So something, yes, like a policy like that could perhaps be implemented further to just general events.
Yeah. And to support what you were saying about these policies, I have been contacted by several residents who are concerned about racist comments being stated in sponsored events and meetings, interested in learning if the city could put forward some sort of a racial sensitivity or racial awareness training or group or something to address these types of issues. So just to say that a lot of people are talking about this.
Yeah.
Ditto. Saying the same thing, but reaching out to.
So I hate for us to end on that, but just, I mean, I just really want everyone to understand that, it's not a me issue. It is we have residents that are actually calling and letting us know it's seemingly starting to get a little bit bigger. And, it's just, it's sad. We're in 2024 and it's, to be at this conference and think we don't have these type of issues going on, and then to hear about it, while I'm gone was disappointing. So anyway, I would just say this, that we all, you don't have to like your neighbor, I think I've said this before, but to get along, and be respectful. That's the whole thing, you don't have to go over anybody's house and have coffee or wine, whatever is your thing. But it is about being respectful. And I get First Amendment, but I also know that there is something about anti-Semitic comments, and other comments. So
I'll
I don't know.
definitely
Thank you.
look into that and, provide something for your discussion.
Thank you.
I
So
also wanted to make one last comment. So a lot of times we are asking questions for the public's edification. Sometimes, everyone's not always looking at all the documents. So sometimes I'm asking questions, or we're asking questions to make sure everyone is aware of what's going on. So just wanted to put that out into the air. And that's all I have to say.
but thank you. And so on a better note, happy holidays. We will see you next year. I hope that your family's safe. You have a wonderful holiday, and I'll be home for 1 week, and I'm out of here. Thank you, everyone. Someone take them.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, you're adjourned. Thank you.